Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm gonna start. The guy behind the scenes with the Zoom and all that stuff is operation. Good afternoon. I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the planning and zoning meeting of the town of Miami Lakes. If you would do the roll call, please.
Good evening. Board Member Leoncio,
Present.
Board Member Senra,
Present.
Board Member Degani is absent, Board Member Fernandez is absent, Board Member De La Sierra is absent, Vice Chair Matos,
Present.
Chairman Julia.
Present.
Chairman, you have quorum.
Okay, at this time, I'd please ask all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a short moment of silence thereafter. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you may be seated. The next item, we could approve the minutes and then, okay. So the next item is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting that took place on April 6th, 2021. If there's a motion to approve,
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the minutes.
we have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
The motion has been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing none opposed, the item carries. At this point, do we know if we have any public comments?
Yes, from what I see, we only had one participant. The name is Lily. I don't see her right now, but if anyone via Zoom wants to participate in public comments, please state your name and address for the record and let us know. Good evening. Just want to make sure that everyone is given the due time to speak. So again, if you're in Zoom and you want to participate in public comments, please let us know. State your name and address for the record. So we don't see anyone, no participants via Zoom. Now I think it is the time to swear in anyone who wishes to participate, or you would like to do that later?
I think
Okay.
staff had recommended maybe changing the order of the agenda. we need a motion for that, or? We don't need a motion to change the agenda.
You do need to make a motion to change the
Okay,
order of the agenda.
So, we have a special presentation with regards to the flood prevention amendment to the code, which is an ordinance. And we wanted to give the students the opportunity to come first. So I would entertain a motion to change the order of the meeting so that we now go into 7A. Then we discuss the variance being requested by our neighbor Ernesto Nip. And then we come back to the town for the micro-mobility. So if there's a motion, I'll make the motion. Is there a
I'll second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion that was seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion carries. So instead of us going now to the quasi-judicial public hearing, we're going to skip you a second and let the students make a presentation, and then we'll come back to yours.
So, Mr. Chair, this item that the children will be presenting is a flood prevention amendment to the code. It's an ordinance of the Town of Miami Lakes, Florida, relating to landscape regulations, amending Chapter 13 Land Development Code, Article 5, allowable encroachments into the required yards and exceptions to the maximum permitted heights. Section 13-1508, driveway and parking spaces. Division 6, creating a subdivision to Division 6, providing for repeal of laws in conflict, providing for severability, providing for inclusion to the code, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, at this point, I'd like staff to make the initial presentation.
Susana Alonso for the Town of Miami Lakes Planning Department. In most cases, you would be hearing the presentation from me in an ordinance such as this one. But in this particular case, I'm gonna allow, staff is gonna allow the young people to present for themselves because they have done all the work pretty much on their own. They have had a little bit of direction from staff as to some ideas to throw around, and obviously have monitored what they have proposed. But everything that you have in front of it is 100% their work, with very minor corrections from my part. Obviously, between first and second reading, there will be some adjustments that need to be made, and it'll be a lot depending on what the discussion here entails, but I'm gonna allow them to present and defend their position, and I will only be here as Lorenzo, as support for any technical and legal issues that may present, but other than that, I'm gonna allow them to do their own presentation as if representing staff. And without any more ado, if you would like to step up.
So each of you state your name and address for the record, and then proceed. It's okay. You could just, it doesn't matter if you're a resident of our town. You just,
My name is Jocelyn Hernandez. My address is 18665 Northwest 37th Avenue, Miami Gardens, Florida 33056. Just a quick question. Do the rest of my classmates have to do the same?
Go.
Do the rest of my classmates have to do the same?
yeah, but they could, when they do their part, they could just introduce themselves, if that's okay.
Good evening, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. My name is Jocelyn Hernandez, and today I am here with my classmates, Lucia Bring, Gabriela Vega, and Mauriza Costa. Today, we will be presenting our proposed amendment to the Land Development Code. We have prepared a presentation for you, and we hope you enjoy. We are a group of students from the Miami Lakes Middle School Center for Civic Leadership program. We have a passion for civic engagement, and this year, we have decided to tackle a very large issue in our community: flooding.
Good evening. My name is Gabriela Vega. My address is 2421 Tarpon Drive, Miramar, Florida 33023. Right. So the motivation for our project mostly came after we saw the major negative impacts that Tropical Storm Eta brought to the town of Miami Lakes. All the schools in Miami Lakes, all public schools in Miami Lakes were closed for a day. An additional half of the schools were closed for an additional day due to community challenges, access, water complications in schools. And specifically, our school auditorium, the bottom of our auditorium was completely flooded with water and electric cords and water, creating an alarming fire and electrical hazard for days. And if you looked at the pictures on the screen, those are pictures of Miami Lakes, of residential areas, an outside look of our school and in the bottom right corner, and also popular areas such as Main Street in Miami Lakes with several feet of standing water. So overall, the reason why flooding is a problem, 305.7 thousand properties in Miami-Dade County, the county we're located in, is at risk of flooding. As you can see in the chart, more than 10,000 properties have extreme risk of flooding, and more than 150,000 properties are at major risk of flooding. And due to this is the reason why the town of Miami Lakes usually spends millions of dollars when it comes to flooding, because just 1 inch of water in these areas is an average damage cost of $25,000. So over here, this is a colored map created by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they designated specific flood zones in Miami Lakes. And as you can see, most of Miami Lakes is blue, making it flood zone AE, which is a high-risk flood hazard zone, and means that a lot of Miami Lakes has high-risk flooding and dangerous flooding.
On the screen, you will see a letter that we received from Ms. Marlene Sejo, a resident of Miami Lakes, who is in support of our initiative. Ms. Sejo has testified her issues that she has experienced with flooding, including loss of power and flooded streets. Additionally, she provided images shown in the previous slides.
Mauriza Costa, 5860 West 9th Lane, Hialeah, Florida, 33012, student at Miami Lakes Middle School. So we have told you several reasons why we believe flooding is a problem, but I much rather you take the residents' words for it. A Town of Miami Lakes community survey was conducted by ETC. As seen in the graph, 65% of surveyed residents agree that flooding has increased in the Town of Miami Lakes. This supports our initial claim that the Town of Miami Lakes is prone to frequent floods. In order to alleviate flooding in the town, we have prepared a policy proposal in the form of an ordinance or an amendment to the Miami Lakes Land Development Code. In our amendment, we propose to lower the maximum allowed percentage of impermeable space, which is currently divided in a 60-40% fashion, with 60% being the maximum allowed impermeable space and 40% being your permeable space like grass. We propose to lower this to 50%, so residents only can have 50%, a maximum of 50% of impermeable space. But then we also, in addition to this, we suggest to increasing this to 70% when a special type of material known as permeable pavers are used. So this special type of material allows water to penetrate the ground, which is one of the keys in reducing stormwater runoff, which in case then also reduces flooding. So we propose that residents are able to get 20% more parking, right? Because if we lower it to 50%, then an increase to 70. So they will get 20% more paved area, which is more parking for their cars, if they use the special type of material known as permeable pavers. This includes permeable concrete, permeable cement, and permeable pavers, of course, as well. So then, in addition to this, they also have to plant plants in their grass area with roots that are extensive enough to hold in place the soil. So this will reduce erosion, which can also lead to flooding in a lot of places. When the border of the property line, when a lot of erosion occurs, the dirt is not sturdy enough to hold in all the water and more flooding occurs.
The reason why we wanted to do this and lower the amount of impervious material allowed and to incentivize permeable pavers is that based off of the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, a science bureau in the United States Department, they stated that impermeable pavers creates dangerous flooding since it increases runoff. And so by using permeable pavers, you reduce the runoff volume, and since there's tiny spaces in the permeable pavers, it reduces the massive pollutants that's able to filtrate into the water, and it allows water to go under the surface into the soil, which prevents flooding overall. As you can see in the diagram on the left, it's mainly how permeable pavers are used. So say, for example, when it's raining, the water is able to go below the surface into the soil instead of if you were using impermeable pavers, it just keeps the water there and less water is able to filtrate into the ground. And in the right is a demonstration of permeable pavers. As you can see, there's permeable asphalt and permeable concrete, and how they have little spaces which allow water to filtrate in the ground, which overall permeable pavers saves money in the long run, because when you use impermeable pavers, the concrete can deteriorate over time and needs constant fixing. So over the years, permeable pavers saves money in the effort.
To better demonstrate our proposal, we created models to show the different ratios on the different size yards. The model you see now is the 25 by 50 front yard that has a total of 1,250 square feet. On the left, you will see that it is the current 60-40 ratio, which has 750 square feet paved and 500 square feet grass. To the right, you will see a proposed 50-50 deduction, which means that there will be 625 square feet on both grass and paved areas. This shows the proposed 70-30 increase, which means that there will be 875 square feet of permeable pavers and then 375 square feet of specific plants that have root systems to prevent erosion.
So like Jocelyn mentioned, we created models for 3 common types of front yards: 25 by 50, 25 by 60, and then 25 by 70. So this is the model for the front yards distributed in a 25 feet by 60 feet fashion. On the model on the left, you will see a simple example of what a currently distributed front yard will look like in the 60-40 fashion. So as you can see, it is distributed in a way where 60% is the middle paved area, and then we have 40%, 20% on each side of the grass area on the border of the property line. The one on the right is an example of our proposed 50-50 reduction, only 750 square feet compared to the previous 900 square feet is paved. So the one on the left has a total of 900 square feet of paved area, and the one on the right only has 750, while the rest is 750 square feet divided by the left and right of permeable area or the grass area. This is our proposed incentive, so residents can incentivize and upgrade to this if they use the special type of material, the permeable pavers, and if they plant plants on the permeable pavement of the permeable area, which would be the grass. So currently, in the town of Miami Lakes, permeable pavers, although they are permeable, they are considered impermeable in the code, so this is why this works out.
So these are models of a front yard that is 25 by 70, which is a total of 1,750 square feet. So these 2 models, there are examples in terms of impermeable material. So in the current 60-40, maximum is 60% of impermeable material, which is about 10,050 square feet, and 40% of grass or any types of plants you want to put in there, which is 525 square feet. And then so our proposed incentive, which is 50-50. And so you would have half and half, so 875 square feet of impermeable material and also 875 square feet of grass. However, we would like to change this to 70-30 for permeable pavers. So if you don't want to have 50-50, so a less parking space or anything like that, you can even have more parking space where you would have about 70% of permeable pavers, which is equivalent to 1,225 square feet, and then also 30% of grass or plants that can hold in for benefit for vegetation, along with the permeable pavers, which helps with the reduction of runoff volume, and that would be about 525 square feet.
My name is Lucia Bring, and I am a resident at 7160 West 10th Court, 33014. In the course of our project, we met with several experts who helped us create the amendment we show to you today. Within these experts was Edgar Westerhoff, the National Director for Flood Risk and Resilience at the large civil engineering company called Arcadis. We would like to tell you all that we spoke about with him. However, we'd much rather show you.
Thank you so much. My name is Edgar Westerhoff. I'm with a big engineering firm called Arcadis. What Arcadis is doing is water management, and I got approached through the Dutch consulate by a couple of really smart students from your school. We have Lucia here, we have Gabriella, we have Jocelyn, and we have Maurits. And they came to me with a proposal, an amendment on how to deal with stormwater. And I was really intrigued because in that amendment, it's talking about all the right topics. And we call them sometimes no regret measures because we know that Miami is in trouble when it comes to water management. We know that Miami needs to act. And we also know that this is very much what we would say like a grassroots need. So it's not just the county, Miami-Dade County, it's not just the city of Miami, it's not just Miami Lakes, it's what residents can do themselves. And that very much relates to say, new developments or maybe retrofits. How can you stimulate people to take action themselves? Maybe have rain barrels. So, the challenge when it's raining is not contributing to the challenge of water in the streets. And when we started our conversation with this group of students, everyone explained their challenge that they're having with flood waters. So it's very visible. It's visible already. And we all know that through sea level rise, climate change, this will only get worse. So I think this proposal from this group of students is spot on. Good work. Congratulations.
Like my classmate previously stated, our amendment to the code was composed after meeting with several experts, including we've emailed, corresponded with Scott Wagner, the vice chairman of the South Florida Water Management District. We've also spoken with Kester Speeders, a National Geographic certified educator, as well as Dr. Yayanta Obesekera. He is the director of the Sea Level Solution Center at the Florida International University. On top of these experts, we've also met with several other experts, including Dr. Vadinsky. He is a professor regarding earth science, also at FIU. We've also met with a senior policy officer from the Dutch consulate. We decided to go international, considering the Netherlands is the country that currently suffers the most from flooding because they are so much under sea level. We decided to go to the top of the top, and we met with Esther van Geloven from the Dutch consulate in Miami, who told us that a lot of the ideas we mentioned in our policy are also being executed in the Netherlands. So the vice chairman of the South Florida Water Management District said that in general, and I quote, "In general, more paving without thought on drainage leads to more flooding," end quote. So in other words, if we do not take action now, our world is being urbanized at a very rapid rate, considering if you go outside of Miami Lakes does a very good job at keeping this managed. But if we go to Hialeah Gardens, Hialeah, other areas, you can see that a lot of people have their driveways fully paved. All of it is concrete. That's why we see a lot of flooding in those areas. So we want to make sure to keep Miami Lakes on the right track, growing beautifully, to make sure we can do everything possible to reduce flooding. We thank you for your time. I would now like to take any questions, concerns, or comments.
Okay, well, first of all, I congratulate you guys for the work that you've done, because not only in the presentation, but in the research behind it, flooding was obviously an issue that our town faced recently, and really more than any of us at least had experienced. So it is definitely something that the town probably would be looking at. I read over the documents that were submitted, and I'm assuming then that what the main thrust of what you're coming up with is this issue of a permeable paver. Is there is that like a regular brick paver, or it's made out of a different substance, or do we know? Because that would be one thing that I guess we would have to define in the code as to what would be an acceptable permeable paver.
So if you remember when we talked about the artificial turf a few weeks ago, one of the components of the artificial turf was the level of permeability that it had, and we talked about measurements like 30 gallons per square inch per, I don't remember, but there was an actual measurement that we required for that. We would be discussing finding a similar way to specify, and these are the changes that would happen between first and second reading, right? To make it a little more defined, a little tighter. But yes, we would find a definition where we would specify the level of permeability that the material would have, and also leave it open enough that any new technology that comes in with that level of permeability is able to fit in without making a major change to the code.
And I'll open up more questions from the board.
If I can, to the chair, have you done an analysis on the cost between the different types of pavers? Your recommended paver, as I'm understanding, based on the amount of research that I did, there's quite a bit of difference in the cost of pavers that are permeable versus not. Am I correct?
So if you were talking about initial cost, for example, on a 25 by 50 lot, using the average price of $5 per square inch, the paved area that would be 70% of that lot, which would be 875 square feet, would be about $4,375 to pave that area specifically. And when we talk about the long run cost of permeable pavers are known to be cost effective, not only because of maintenance and upkeep is not the same as that of concrete, but also because of the other pros that come with it, such as, in this specific case, we would have plants that prevent erosion, which, prevents things like that. And then there's flooding, which it prevents. And as we discussed previously, flooding is very expensive, $25,000 per inch of flooding. So in the long run, it is expensive. It's more cost effective, but in the beginning, it may seem more expensive, but you are getting the benefit for your money.
Also, in addition to what my classmate was saying, so we did try to contact a regular concrete vendor earlier today, a local concrete vendor. We were unable to, but if we go based off national average, currently regular cement concrete, the national average is $4 to $10 per square feet. So if we take it on the low end by $4, it's really not that much of a difference. But if we go on the high end, where we go to $8, $9, it can actually be more expensive than permeable pavers.
If I can as well. So if I'm understanding your diagrams, you're proposing to enter into the setbacks with the product. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The setbacks. Your diagrams are indicative of the pavers going into the setbacks. Am I correct?
So initially, we are setting back a little bit, only by 10%, the amount of impervious material being used. But initially, if what we're stating is if you are not using impervious material, which is what we're trying to decrease the use of because it's what's creating dangerous flooding, you'll be able to use 70% of permeable pavers. So you'll even have 10% more instead of 10% less of space that you're able to use, and it's a more beneficial product or material being used for the driveway.
And I may answer that one more clearly. No, they're not going into the setbacks. They're only increasing the percentage that you're allowed to pave. In other words, the setbacks are going to be the same no matter what, because you can't go into those. It would have to be a separate ordinance to reduce the setbacks. What they're requesting is that we allow a larger percentage of the front yard or of the backyard to be paved when and if they're using the permeable pavers, but not reduction of setbacks. Even if you follow the setbacks to the line, you can still not pave everything within the setbacks unless you have a swimming pool, which counts as permeable surface. Does that make sense? So if you just follow strictly on any property, just follow your setbacks and try to pave everything in between your setbacks, you would not be allowed. because there's still a maximum that you have to, that you have to maintain permeable and green.
How does that interfere, though, with our landscaping requirements? Because that's my only concern, well, one of the concerns would be that.
That would be one of the concerns, that it would be a little in conflict with the Miami-Dade County minimum requirements for open landscape. And I believe that was one of the reasons that they were discussing enhancing further the portions of landscaping that are left so that they're lushier. And remember that the requirement for landscaping is site-wide. So you have to have a minimum landscaping on the entire site. So as long as you don't reduce that, we're okay. It would be okay to reduce the portion only on the front setback, which is what they were discussing with the driveways, as long as we make sure that that landscaping is better than your average landscaping. So a little bit lusher and a little more rooty, right, with more roots to contain the dirt and mitigate the fact that you have less. Did I? Yeah.
To the chair. I want to commend you guys for, even though one of your members was somewhat confused this evening and say good morning when I walked in, but obviously they did their homework, very well. I am surprised, though. I'm very surprised that to learn, and we all learn something new every day, but I'm very surprised to learn that actually pavers absorb more water than grass. Is that the
So it all depends. It all depends on the type of subsoil that you have. It depends on the type of under material that goes underneath the pavers. It depends on a lot of things. If you have grass and then you have muck under the grass, and you may have seen this around town, it doesn't absorb anything. It's just like basically you're pouring water over Vaseline. It just goes nowhere. It looks green, but the second any water touches it, it just stays right on top, and eventually it percolates down, but it doesn't go much. So that's why it's kind of like, it depends on what's on each individual site. Some areas of town were developed where they demucked very effectively, and then they put in soils that drained well, and those areas drain okay now. They still get flooded when obviously there's more rain than necessary, because the amount of grass that we have is not enough to absorb all the water that falls in, because they have to absorb that water plus whatever's on the paved areas and whatever's on the impervious areas. So there's more than that. But the areas that are not demucked well, they don't really.
Did I hear correctly that in the city of Hialeah there is less flood problem than what we have here in Miami Lakes?
I'm gonna let them answer to their own research.
I always wanted to clarify. What I meant to say was, compared to Miami Lakes, a lot of cities have it far worse, actually. So Miami Lakes has done actually a very good job at managing, but we still see problems occur even when it's better to other cities. If you go to a lot of other municipalities nearby, I see this personally. I have neighbors, I've seen it, where they have all of their front yard paved. They have zero grass. And what happens is that one neighbor that does have grass, all of the water runs into that front yard, into that backyard, and their backyard and front yard gets flooded. So even though Miami Lakes does not have this problem specifically as bad when it comes to all of their front yards being paved, we still have the problem of flooding in the town. And we do hope that this will reduce it in the long run. Does that answer a little bit?
So what you're saying is that no, it doesn't. Hialeah doesn't have a worse problem than we have.
No, sir. Yes, they do.
They do have a worse problem than us.
I mean, this is just based off our personal views and opinion that we've seen, living nearby. We've seen our neighbors have. If you drive through Miami Lakes, I can assure you that no houses have zero grass in their front yards. Well, if you go to Hialeah Gardens, areas like that, you will see that, because a lot of the neighbors fully pave all of their front yards, and that is not good, right?
I know. I mean, if you drive through Hialeah, and I was raised in Hialeah, and I have family there, but most of the homes are fully paved in the front,
Correct, sir. That
you
is what
know.
we were referring to.
Sometimes you have homes right one after the other that is fully paved. I don't think that's what we want here.
Of course not. So that's exactly, what we are also trying to prevent in a way. That leads to a lot of runoff occurring, which causes a lot of flooding. So what we're trying to do here is to let water seep through with the permeable pavers. Regular concrete does not really allow water to penetrate. If you use this special type of material, not only will the residents have more parking space for their cars, but the water will go through the permeable paver into the ground and get absorbed into the groundwater. So that's what we are trying to achieve, incentivizing the use of this special type of material, which allows water to properly penetrate the ground.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming that any kind of calculation would have to be the entire site, has to have it can't be a mix of permeable and not permeable paver, or how you're gonna take that into consideration when you do the calculation?
Choices.
Huh?
We can do either or. We can choose to do the
I'm
whole
just
thing.
thinking
or
like
just-
sometimes you have something in your back deck. Because when you're looking at this, how do you, is this defined just like 70% just for the front and the front side, or is it for the entire site?
I believe from what I read, and I'm going to speak for what I read, so you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? What I read is that they propose that we decrease the total amount for the entire site for everybody to 50%, 50-50,
Right,
Okay.
from 60 to 50,
right, for everybody.
right.
And then allow 20% extra if permeable materials are used on all of it. That's the part that is not so clear. So, do you see the question?
Yes, could you please repeat that?
All right, so I'm gonna repeat the question.
Wait a minute.
We're decreasing the total amount, they're requesting to decrease the total amount for everybody to 50-50. 50% paved, 50% unpaved. And then incentivize permeable pavers by allowing people that do permeable pavers to go up to 70%. And the question is, on the entire site or just on the front yard?
This would not apply to any back patios or things like that. This would be for the front yards, and we base it off of the front yard sizes provided to us by staff. And also, I think we should mention that we hope to possibly grandfather residents who already have 60-40 ratios in, because we don't believe that it makes sense. If your driveway is already like this, we're not going to make you spend thousands of dollars if your driveway is perfectly fine the way that it is.
If I can, to the chair, I sat a number of different times on a flood panel that was put together by the town of Miami Lakes. And the big issue over the years has always been we have too much concrete, too much paved area. So I'm super resistant to the idea of 70% to allow for more cars and more parking. So if an entire block, every street went 70, 70, 70, we've eliminated how much of the green area. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate the intent and the amount of work that went into this. But I'm really struggling with the idea of changing the ratios regardless of the product. And I understand, I've spent a lot of time on this today. And I'm curious, did anybody reach out to the Town of Miami Lakes Building Department and the people that formed that flood panel while you were doing your research?
Well, we were not aware. We did reach out to Miami-Dade County flood panel. The panel was closed a couple of years ago, but we were not aware of any Miami Lakes flood panel. But regarding to your concerns, if I may, do you mind if I clarify? Is that okay? If I clarify some of your concerns, yes? So we are actually doing a little bit of the opposite. We are not telling everybody, come, get 70%, get this. We are telling them, get less. We are actually cutting it down from 60-40 to 50-50. So we are reducing the amount of concrete, right? We're not increasing it. Wow, what we are saying is we are incentivizing the use of a special material, which is not like concrete, right? So, in other words, if you use this special material, which has better effects than concrete, it does not have the same damaging effects when it comes to flooding, then you get the 70%. But for everybody else, you need to stick, if you want to use normal concrete, you need to stick to only 50%.
I understand. I appreciate the clarification, but I did understand that. But you understand why I'm asking those questions? The extent of the elimination of the green area is concerning for me.
I just wanted to add something on to what my classmate said. So the current policy is right now 60-40. However, it's a maximum of 60%, but they're not saying that the 40% has to be green area. So technically right now you can make the green area whatever you want. It could be even permeable pavers, but it's still, in a sense, no green area. So what we put in our policy, in our initiative, is that it's permeable, so there's no impervious at all, so that's benefit for flooding, but we also added 30% of green area necessary. So we're telling residents that you can also have permeable pavers, which will benefit you in the sense of flooding, but also you need a necessary 30% of green area. Unlike now, you could have technically almost 100 space if it was 60% impervious material and 40% permeable material. It could be green space, but it's not necessary. And in our initiative, we're making it necessary to have at least 30% of green area.
To the chair, I have another question. Are there any homes in our town with the permeable pavers?
Not that I know of. And certainly we wouldn't have looked for it upon permitting. They would have come in and said they want to pave something, and we wouldn't ask them what kind of paving material they're going to use. We're going to look at the dimensions, and we're going to look at percentages and not necessarily at materials.
Are this type of permeable pavers done here in the area, or do they have to be imported? Is there a company that anybody's familiar with that makes them, or how do we come up with that?
You can actually buy these at Home Depot. There's these specific ones that are called, they're like these specific ones that are plastic grid pavers that you fill in with sediments, soil, sand, and you can actually buy the base for that at Home Depot.
And regarding to your question with like professional installers, I mean, we can certainly look into it. I mean, I don't think we have specifically into any companies that install permeable pavers, but I don't doubt that there are in the area.
Because what I had looked up is that the whole issue of how permeable they are depends very much not on only what you see, but how it's actually built up
Inside.
with the different and the underneath.
The underneath.
So it's the install is what's going to dictate sometimes the permeability of the actual paver.
Right, so so if this was to pass, between first and second reading, additions that staff would make to the ordinance would be better definitions of the product and a more thorough explanation of the permitting process by which we would check that the proper infill was going to be used and the proper undersoil was going to be used. And very similar to what we proposed with the artificial turf. They would come in, show their product approvals, show that they're putting in the right infill, and it would be checked for inspections. Not necessarily what you have in front of you right now, because they don't know to add those things, and I didn't want to, adulterate their product. So I kind of left it the way it was. But that's the kind of changes that I would make between first and second reading should this go any further.
Okay. So this Exhibit A was created entirely by them?
100% including the staff report.
Okay.
One last quick question, if I can, through the chair. And if you covered this, I missed it, and I apologize. Is there any possibility that as a result of using this product, there would be a reduction in the flood insurance premium for an individual? So let's just say I utilized that product. Has there been any conversation about whether or not that it would impact flood insurance premiums, or we don't know that?
I mean, we are not technically, we would have to look further into that if there would be a way for any deduction in flood insurance. However, technically, if a property gets flooded and the insurance has to cover it and you have less flooding, then there would be a less cost for the insurance and for the person paying for the insurance because they're using a sort of material that is preventing flooding for their property.
So then in order to make that possible, likely, everybody would have to use the product. And if you're not doing it in the back, just the front, that would be, I guess, maybe a moot point until everybody got on board, but it's interesting. Thanks so much.
Another point of privilege, if and when this should go forward from first to second reading, one of the additions that staff would suggest is that this be extended to commercial properties, so that required parking utilizes a larger percentage of paved permeable pavers, and that would really, really increase significantly the amount of paved areas in the town. It is also possible that we can have some sort of in-between thing that is not exactly what they're proposing, but is somewhere in between. So,
Also, if I may, what Ms. Alonso just brought up, it reminded me of a point that was brought earlier up by the Planning and Zoning Board, which was whether this would apply only to front yards or also to backyards. And although our original policy did only plan to doing this on front yards, this could be a compromise. We could alter this in the future if that works out for the town better.
If there's no further questions, then typically what we would do is we would entertain a motion approving or moving forward, suggesting approval by the
or
board.
discussion in between you without, after answering questions, you may
Correct.
have a discussion in between the board members.
So I'm just going to be a mean person now for a second. When I read the documents that you created, it's really important that you carefully proofread every word. So I know that the whole issue that we're talking about is pervious and impervious, and this happens to me all the time. But on the second line, because the R and the E were switched, it says previous instead of pervious. So I hate to be a stickler, but
We do apologize for that.
No,
We
it's
will
just-
fix it.
and that's the importance of when you're drafting anything that has to do with an ordinance, a letter here or a letter there changes entirely what is being voted on and what's being, moved on. So and it happens to all of us a lot. And sometimes we send an email or a text and then we go like, oh my God, that's not the word that I wanted to use. And we fight with Siri, but it's too late. So just a little bit of friendly advice. So at this point, I'd like to open, you may have a seat. We can discuss amongst ourselves if we want to entertain a motion to approve or approve it with recommendations. Because I do think that the concept is something interesting. I really didn't even know about permeable pavers, to be quite honest, until I read the agenda item. I personally think that the artificial turf could fall into that, but that's a separate discussion. I do think that it's something that the town should look at. I think going forward, there should be a little bit more meat in terms of definition of what is a permeable paver, what is the proper installation methods, and always keeping in mind landscaping. I don't know if perhaps, and my feeling with what board member Matos was saying about, do we really want 70%? How is that going to interact with our landscaping? These are all the different things that I've thought about that I'd like to get everybody else's opinion moving forward with a motion.
Is that, Mr. Sherman, is actually, going against what, we have always tried to preserve, which is a green, you know, and so many times we have all have discussions on this matter, that we want green, we want more green and more green, and you know, the building department demands you know, green and trees and what have you. So I think we just need to you know, take baby steps on this and study it real hard, and to make sure that I guess that like I said, I guess it has to do with a lot of what the sediment is. Whatever is underneath the, you know, the permeable pavers, in order to be effective or to do whatever job they're supposed to do. So I think we should, you know, go forward with it, but carefully, not rush into it.
I think that I would really like to see more information about the product and the installation process. And I agree. I'm super excited about what you've done and what you're proposing. I think that every time that we get together with you, we learn something new, but I think baby steps are important. I'm all about the green, so I'm struggling a little bit with that. But I would like to see more information brought forward. Perhaps you could come back with some additional information about the product and about the installation. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, one of the things that we can do is basically not vote per se and just table the item like we did with the landscaping.
I'm taking notes on your recommendations, and I will present them as your recommendations to the, if you vote on, and I'll read them back to you when you're done, so you can make a motion. And I will add these as your recommendations to the council. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to go forth with this, keeping in mind all the objectivity that we have presented here this evening, or all the concerns that we have presented here this evening, and going at it, you know, slowly and carefully to make sure that is exactly what is needed, you know, what's going to be effective into reducing the flooding situation. So I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'm sorry, I need clarification on your motion. You're motioning that we're going to second reading with this?
Right, to go forth, but with a lot of being very careful in how we, you know, how they go about studying the whole situation, and to make sure that those permeable pavers are as effective as they say they are, and of course keeping in mind that you know, that this town has always been based on green areas, and you know, so we don't want to sacrifice a lot of the green areas if we don't really have to, in order to help the flood situation. You know. I know it's kind of elaborate, but
Well, I think
If I may,
is coming up with some of
yes.
the recommendations that we're talking about, which one of
My-
them is maybe
my-
addressing the 70%.
my notes are going to say, the planning board expressed concerns regarding the percentages, regarding reducing the percentage of required landscaping on the yards, and would like to add definitions and permeability rates, minimum permeability rates to the ordinance, as well as language regarding permitting particulars and information on the actual product. My sentence is going to read something like that. If you're
And
all
the
okay with it.
installation,
Huh?
and how they install it, the
And
proper
installation,
installation
correct.
procedures.
I think that sounds good. That sounds fair to me.
And that will go on the memo to the first reading of the council.
So through the chair to Susanna, then it does not come back to us?
It
goes-
would not come back to you, no.
And you
Un-
feel,
unless the council changes it so much that it requires, like, that it feels completely different, and in which case, yes, we would bring it back.
I guess the alternative, if we do want it to come back in front of us, is there an alternative? Can we make a motion for it to come back after they?
Mr. Attorney?
You can. You can ask for it to come back to you, but, I mean, the issue is that it needs to come back to you. So the reason it's before you today is because the code requires it. It's a change to the land development code. We could, on first reading, mention that to the council and have them incorporate that it is your desire that once it passes first reading for them and these corrections are adopted, for it to come back to you for additional consideration. So that can be a motion, understanding that it's subject to the council deciding whether or not they wish for it to come back before you again for a second round. But that can definitely be part of your suggestion.
So let's make that motion with that caveat of on first reading to come back to us.
With that, I'll be able to support it.
Right.
So we have a long motion
It's very long.
with recommendations. I'm gonna take Lynn's as a second to that motion.
I'll second with the discussed amendment.
Okay. We could discuss or we could vote. I think we
We can
kind of
vote, we
discussed
can
already.
vote.
Board Member Leoncio, I mean,
I think we need more numbers. I think we need more investigation on the product, and I think it should come back to us. That's and I think that's part of the
Right.
the motion.
It's part of the motion, yes.
okay, so I guess we could do the vote so that we could go on to your variance.
Board Member Senra.
Yes.
Board Member Leoncio.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matos.
Yes.
Chairman Julia.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, so now, so the motion passes, so it'll go in front of the board, and then if they agree, they'll send it back to us. So we hope to see you again. And then it'll go for second reading. Again, congratulations for your work, and we really appreciate looking into something that really does affect everyday life. It's not just a theory. It's something that we suffered a couple of months ago, or almost a year ago, but it was definitely an interesting thing to see water inside my garage, because that had never happened, and I've only lived in the house for 20 years. So definitely something to think about. So thank you for bringing that up to us. Okay, so back to the regularly scheduled program. At this point, we're going to go into quasi-judicial public hearing, which requires that those that are going to be speaking are sworn in. So
if you're going to speak, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to say the truth and only the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, at this point, I need to make a disclosure.
yeah. I was gonna say.
Please be advised that the following items of the board's agenda are quasi-judicial in nature. An opportunity for persons to speak on each item will be made after the applicant and the staff have made their presentation on each item. All testimony, including public testimony and evidence, will be made under oath or affirmation. Additionally, each person who gives testimony may be subject to cross-examination. If you do not wish to be cross-examined, your testimony will be given its due weight. The general public will not be permitted to cross-examine witnesses, but the public may request the board to ask questions of staff or witnesses on their behalf. Persons representing organization must present evidence of their authority to speak for the organization. Any person presenting documents to the board should provide the town clerk with a minimum of 10 copies. Further details of the judicial procedure may be obtained from the clerk. At this time, Mr. Chair, I think it would be prudent, anyone that has had any quasi-judicial any ex parte communication. Ex parte communication is any communication with the applicant or anyone with regards to this item. You should disclose it now unless you've already previously disclosed it.
If anybody from the board has discussed the item ex parte with anyone, I have not.
No, I have not.
Okay.
No.
And Mr. Chair, before we move to the item at hand, Mr. Nip, I would like to ask the board and put on the record that variance application 2021-0256, Jay Hazelcorn, appeared today and he asked for a continuance, and we allowed him to continue his application for next month. The application that you have before you is variance application 2021-0295, Ernesto Nip.
Okay, so typically staff would commence and then we would ask you to make your presentation.
Again, Susana Alonso for the Planning Department. The applicant is proposing to build a 10-foot by 25-foot swimming pool in the rear yard of his single-family home. Per the submitted survey, the rear setback of the home is 29.5 feet, but it is encumbered with an existing aluminum roof canopy projecting 12 feet from the rear wall of the home that was built at the same time as the home. As a result, the remaining space is insufficient to allow for a pool, and the applicant is requesting a reduction of the required setback in order to accommodate it. Staff is recommending denial for the proposal as it does not meet the variance criteria as of section 13-305F1. The staff report in front of you is submitted hereby for the record, and it has all the enumeration of the particular criteria, which ones they do meet and which ones they do not meet. Particularly, condition number 1, I need to amend on the record as we have not received written support of the application. However, I believe the applicant has brought written report from at least one neighboring property owner in his hand, and he's ready to submit it for the record. All other sections of the analysis are as shown. As you can see, they do meet portions C and D, as well as A, so they have 3 out of the 7, and therefore do not meet the criteria for approval.
Other than the variance for the setback, if the board were to allow it, do they meet the issue of pervious and impervious?
Yes, they do. Again, when a swimming pool is involved in a rear yard, the area of the swimming pool counts as pervious because it is collecting water. Therefore, whenever you have a pool, pretty much everything else can be paved as long as they're keeping to their setbacks, and you do the calculations forward and backwards, you're always going to come in under the required paving on the rear yard, unless they have a really, really large rear yard. In most cases, with a normal size, regular rear yard, it falls right in.
And on the side setbacks, their plans are.
They're not requesting variance on the sides, only on the rear setback.
Any other questions to staff?
I would like to point out, as per the analysis and is reflected on the staff report, that this home is located in a zero lot line area,
Right.
at which other properties which are developed as zero lot line properties are allowed to have a 5-foot setback on their swimming pools. And that is the reason why, however, this home is developed as a regular single-family home as it would be developed elsewhere, not in a zero lot line area, which is why it's a little bit confusing as to why this home has a setback requirement larger than other homes in its vicinity. If this home was developed as a zero lot line home, it would be allowed to have a 5-foot setback on the rear for its pool. But because it was developed with setbacks on both sides and not respecting the setback on one side and the 10-foot setback on the other side, it needs to follow the regular regulations. There is many other homes in the area, however, that do have a 5-foot setback, and that's why they do, they meet some of the criteria for the variance, because the development patterns of the neighborhood are so that 5-foot setback home swimming pools exist in abundance in the area.
Okay. And the survey that they, going back to my comment about the importance of letters and stuff on documents, the survey, even though it says Southwest 146th Lane, we are convinced that it is this property,
Yeah.
right?
That's the surveyor.
Okay, because just a letter difference. No big deal. But anyway, I don't know. I'm a proofreader, I guess, in my other life.
You do well by that.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, at this time, if the applicant would like to come forward, please state your name and address for the record first.
Yeah, my name is Ernesto Nape. My address is 8800 Northwest 146 Lane, Miami Lake, Florida 33018. My English is not very good, but here I got my son. He can help me with that. Okay, in the first picture, you can see the line of this house to my house to the 87. The first one is. All these houses is in a line, but if you see the second one, in the second one you see all the houses go to the street, and que estas casas están más para acá, ¿entiendes? Entonces esta es la razón por la que tengo menos patio, ¿entiendes? Okay.
So what my father was stating was, our house is set more back than the neighbors. The neighbors have more room to the front, so that's why our rear backyard has a little bit of size. So that's why we're trying to keep it to a 5-foot setback.
In the third picture, you can see the area photo is you can see the line there. It's more inside to the in. In the fourth one, I can take a measurement to the wall to my grass. It's I think it's a 14 feet and a half, and then the 5 photo you can see the grass to the wall is around 16.2 inches, and if I do it's at 10 feet or 8 feet pool. Yeah, if I have 8 feet in for a pool, it's not enough, I think. Take me to the that is the reason, because I want a 5 feet in the variance, not 7 feet and a half. I don't have problem in the side, but I have problem in the back. I don't have, if you see in the area picture, I don't have a neighbor in the back, but it's a dead-end street, and my right-hand neighbor is no problem with that. He got a letter here for him.
Do you have extra copies? No?
If I may say my name, my name is Brian Paez. I'm also his next door neighbor. My house was built back in '99. My house was built back in '99 when.
Can you get your full address for the record? I know you're in the neighbor. What's your full address?
It's 8812 Northwest, 146 Lane, Miami Lakes, Florida 33018.
Thank you.
So my house, we did have a pool. We built back in 2004 when it used to be Miami-Dade Unincorporated. In my house, the pool was built with the 5 feet setback. Back then it was allowed. It's basically what he's requesting now, to have the same amount of space that we have in our house.
Okay. have any questions for the applicant from the board?
If I can, through the chair, would you please explain to me, you've got a covered terrace area, am I correct? I didn't see that in these pictures exactly, but in reading the documents, I understand you have a covered terrace. Is that a permanent structure? That's a new structure?
Yes.
When I
you said
buy
it.
the house, and all this have permit with the aluminum roof too.
Right, and so if that structure were eliminated, would you still need the variance? Would there be a way to change that and make that covered area smaller than eliminating the need for the variance?
What do you mean? I put the floor?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean? Do you want I go in with my floor and put it?
I'm just asking the question. If that's the original structure and that's a permanent structure,
Sí,
what
eso
is that
estaba ahí
structure made
originally.
out of?
Yes, yes, it was.
Yeah, from what the document says, the structure was built with the house originally. But I concur with your comment, because that's the same thing I had in mind. Can you reduce the size of the terrace? Because right now,
Tú lo puedes reducir. Sí, pero eso está nuevo. Eso tú buscaste la idea.
Sí, no tiene sentido que quitemos la terraza porque
and I can't read how,
los 2 pies y
how
medio que
it's
ellos piden.
He said yes, but
The terrace
it
is
would.
11.7.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The terrace is 11.7 deep towards the back. So what if you made the terrace 9 feet? Because they're asking for a reduction of the setback from the rear? And how much is
Correct.
the reduction?
2.5 feet. So
2.5
from 7.5 to 5, so 2.5 feet.
Even though they're saying that the back is on a slope?
I'm sorry?
Sorry?
On one of the diagrams, it looks like their back property line is on a slope, so it goes from 5 to 5.5. What they're requiring. So on one part, they're requiring 2.5 feet, and it looks on the other side of the pool, they're saying it's 2 feet, only what they need. No, I'm just looking at, I don't know if that's straight in the back or not.
I can see the numbers.
It's the same surveyor that put the S instead of the N, so your guess is as good as mine.
So my question stands. Can the terrace be reduced by 2.5 feet instead of being 11.7, which is close to 12 feet, making it 10 feet?
Reducir la terraza, él quiere de quitar.
By reducing, by reducing, you mean cutting the terrace?
Yes.
Sí, pero él dice que sí.
If I put the ¿cómo se dice terraza?
Terrace.
The floor, right? It's inside to the post, to the roof.
Yes.
I have to remove the roof too, and put
You would have to remove relocate the columns and cut 2.5 feet from the roof. Yes.
This is a good floor. It's no bad, you know. I mean, if I have to put it, I have to take out the roof too. And the roof is do it with permit, and the terrace is the floor too is do it with permit in the past, you know.
No,
when I buy the house.
I understand. When Miami-Dade County gave you the permit for that, they just gave you the permit because it was permitted at the time. But that didn't give you enough room for a pool. So that's.
Well, my thing is, my neighbors have 5 feet to it for the wall in the back. Why I have to put the floor and take out the roof if I can put 5 feet to it with the variance? You understand?
Mm-hmm.
This is my reason, you know. I wanna stay with with my concrete there under my roof too. I love my roof. It's a lot of stars there.
If I may answer Chairman Julia's question from before, they're requesting 5 feet, and that allows them to go 5 feet all the way across the setback. That's why they're not requesting 5 feet on one side and 5 and change on the other side. They're just requesting 5 feet to be allowed to do 5 feet all throughout. And they can choose to do it, angled as the wall is, or they can choose to make it parallel, or they can choose to do it the way that they're showing. As long as if the variance is granted, it would be granted throughout the setback, not just in one corner.
To the chair, Mr. Nip, I hear what you're saying regarding your neighbor. The problem with that is that when your neighbor bought the house or built the pool or whatever, it was not Miami Lakes. So in Miami Lakes, we do have certain requirements, and many times we have denied, and what we're trying to do here with you right now is trying to work with you. So it's kind of a give and take kind of a situation. If you want to build the pool, I think that you should give in and say maybe cut a piece of your awning there that you have. It's not a
model the whole house. So, and this laminate floor we put it so it costs us a lot of money. Now that we have to cut it, it's costs us even more to do that.
I understand. I hear you. But the thing is that, you're 2.5 feet from the setback, and it's not something that we like to
Maintain.
Because it's something that is totally against the and I know you apply for the variance and whatever, but it's not what the town building code calls for.
Okay.
So we need to make sure that, and at times we do a give and take to allow the property owner to do it. I remember when I built my house here 40-some years ago, that I couldn't bring my pool beyond 35 feet from the lake shore to the property line. I had to leave 35 feet of space there. I had no choice, and we were not even a town. The Graham companies controlled that at that time when that happened. But it's something that you need to consider.
The other thing is I have 4 posts for the roof. Each post have a footing for 3 by 3 by 3. It's a lot of concrete there.
How far is that pole?
How
Do you-
far is it?
Do you have any demarcation as to,
Yeah, it's like the 2 feet, the post to the wall, to the concrete is 1 feet.
because your backyard is how, I'm trying to figure out
I
what,
got 16 feet in grass to the wall.
okay, so you got 16 feet from the border of your existing terrace to the wall. How much room do you have from the border of your terrace to the pole? Going back towards your house.
16 feet. I got in the terraces, I got 14, and then to the wall I have the terrace to the wall I have 7. It's 16 feet, 2 inches.
So the backyard initially had, if we're gonna go not from the terrace, but from the wall of your home, it's about 30 feet in the back? 29 is what you have. Because on your survey, the terrace is only showing as 11.7, but you're saying it's actually 14. Yeah. So it's 14, not 11.7, the way the survey says. The survey, I mean, I don't know,
The survey says 11.7.
right?
The survey says 11.7.
Yeah, I know, because my eyesight is, I just wanted to confirm, because my numbers are not adding up here. So if it's 11.7, let's say it's 12, we have 17 feet available. So you'd only need half a foot. And you could still do, I understand less than a 10-foot wide pool you're not going to do. I mean, it's just too narrow. The issue is, I guess, 29 less 14, now you only have 15 feet. So that's where you need the 5 feet. So what my colleagues are saying is there a possibility to cut the 2 feet instead of getting it from the setback? You know, take it away from your existing terrace, is what they're
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
stating. And I gather from what you're saying is that within those 2 feet, you have the actual structural poles that holds the whole terrace. So it's not that simple to just cut a roof line or cut a cement. Now, you literally would have to take down the terrace and rebuild.
Correct.
Is there any other questions of the board,
No.
of the
No.
applicant? Is there any other items that you want to, because basically the way is, you know, first Susanna presented, now you present, any other members of the audience can come and give their opinions. Then we close public hearing, and then amongst us, we will discuss approving, not approving, changing something around. So I just want to give you all the opportunity to have, express yourself 100, you know, percent, anything you want to say, you know.
No, we don't.
I noticed, as you mentioned, that your house does not back into another house. It literally backs into a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, a dead end.
That's also correct. Okay. Do you have anything else to say? 'Cause
No, we don't.
okay. Is there any other person present? I don't even know if, can we elicit from Zoom thing, or that's already been turned off? Make sure that there's no one else that,
Yes, absolutely. And
thank you.
again, I'm looking at my screen monitor. I only see 4 participants. Lily is the only person from the public that I see as a participant. We reached out earlier this evening. She stated that she was only participating to be able to see and hear at the meeting, that she was not planning on speaking, but I can reach out again. It's Miss Lily. I have seen, she still is a participant. Lily, if you're listening to us, and if you wish to make a public comment, please do so now. But there is no one else, Chair.
Okay, before I close the public hearing, is it okay for me to read the letter? I mean, you're supposed to make several copies, but I think we could accept the letter, and I'll just read it into the record.
You can.
Okay. So this is a letter dated June 1st, 2021. It's addressed to the town of Miami Lakes regarding a variance from section 13-1512. It states, "To whom it may concern, I am writing this letter with the intent to inform you that I have no objection to the variance from section 13-1512 that my neighbor Ernesto Nepp presented to our city of Miami Lakes. This variance allows a swimming pool with a 5-foot setback where a 7.5 feet are required. Please do not hesitate to contact me at," and it provides the phone for further information. "Sincerely, Jose Calles." He's the homeowner at 8806 Northwest 146th Lane in Miami Lakes, Florida 33008. So I'm assuming it's the next door neighbor to the applicant. Okay, so,
I'm doing the math here on from the survey, and I don't know if my eyes are that good, but your lot is this lot is 100 and it's close to the public already? We're
yeah,
discussing
oh,
among
I'm sorry,
ourselves?
yeah, I'm closing the public hearing, and now it'll be discussion amongst us.
Okay, so
See,
the
now-
lot is 105 foot deep. The front setback is 29.67. 29.67,
Correct.
29.67, and then the house is 46 foot deep.
Correct.
Okay.
That gives you 29 feet in the back. The issue is whether, if you had the 12,
It gives you 29, and then the terrace is 12 feet. 11.7.
yeah, the thing is that his measurement is showing,
11 by 27.
So then from the edge of the terrace to the rear property line is 17 feet.
right, and the issue is coming with this picture that he's presenting that I think he labeled as picture number 4, that shows 150 inches. Yeah. That's 12 and a half feet.
Yeah, 150 inches, right.
Hmm?
But then the math doesn't add up.
Well, I think what the reason,
His measuring tape is true.
yeah, no, but
But the survey and the numbers that the survey has does not jive. I mean, the survey is in his favor. Because he has 17 feet from the edge of the terrace to the property.
yeah, I think what basically is happening, if we look at the way that the pool is being designed, it's not, I guess the intent is to leave a little bit of area between the existing terrace and where the pool actually starts. And that's what's pushing it further towards the setback. So the issue is, I mean, technically, could he build the pool without this? If he does it literally right on where his terrace ends right now, it could happen. I don't know if that's even possible to build to do the foundation of the pool so close to that other without messing up. I think what the applicant is looking for is not to touch his existing floor of his terrace and leave a little bit of a buffer
Yeah.
for the pool
understand.
area.
I
I
understand.
guess that's what they're asking for. Now, if the property is zoned, that area is a zero lot line area. So
Correct.
it's RU1Z.
RU1Z.
So what is the building, the way that because if the house would have been literally with a 10-foot on the side, he could build this without a variance.
Correct. So the RU1C allows a larger density than other single-family denominations, and in order to achieve this greater density, they distribute the setbacks of the home a little different. So instead of having a 5-foot setback on each side, you achieve that 10-foot separation between the two homes by leaving 0 on one line, 0 setback, and then 10 on the other side. The result is 10 feet between the homes anyway, but one of the walls of the residence ends up being exactly on the property line. This way you end up with a lot narrower lots. You can even do less than 50-foot lots, even 45 and 40 feet lots, and still attain a pretty nice large home in a much smaller lot. The situation with Mr. Nipp's property is that it is a regularly sized lot within the 0 lot line area. And therefore, the area allows for a smaller lot with the other configuration of the home, but this particular lot was larger and had accommodated a regular single-family home with regular single-family setbacks on the side, so 5 on each side, 5 on each side.
But wouldn't a regular lot require 7.5 and 7.5 on each side?
7.5, 7.5, you got it.
So this one was done with 5.
And they're allowed 5 and 5 in this area. And again,
So
to
why wouldn't
attain
that apply to the pool setback?
it was never allowed like that. It was 7.5. So when you read the pool setback requirements, it carves out the zero lot line homes for 5 foot, but it says it doesn't read as homes in zero lot line districts. It says homes developed as zero lot line. Does that make sense? So the difference is the setback release is for
Again.
the home and not for the district.
Going back to the importance
How
of
it's
every
written.
single word
Correct,
in
yes.
anything that we do.
And it could be interpreted, and it hasn't, but it could be interpreted that all homes within the zero lot line district, regardless of how they were developed, would be allowed to have 5 foot setbacks on their pools. And it may be that that's how the county has interpreted in the past, or however, the person that brought Mr. Nip to my attention is a town employee that used to work for the county in the past as a zoning reviewer, and he was the one to explain to me that no, we could not allow Mr. Nip to have that 5 foot setback because his home was not developed as a zero lot line home.
Yeah,
And
no, it's
he
just strange that
we
for
read
one
it
thing,
together, and effectively it was that, yes, it read exactly like we are saying.
so wouldn't the same rule apply for the side setbacks of the 5 instead of the 7.5, if that's the same way it's worded?
We are not talking about that one right now, and I'm not prepared to discuss it because I'm not sure.
it just
But that's a
seems that-
fantastic question. I would have to look into it, though. I can't
It just doesn't
talk off
seem
the cuff on that.
fair to.
Yes.
What about making the pool 8 foot wide?
No. Well, I mean, I guess I would entertain a motion. We need to entertain a motion to the matter.
And I'm still concerned about the discrepancy between the survey and his measurement. His measurements are correct, so so there's.
Hey, you want me to reopen? You want to make a motion to reopen to allow, I have to reopen to allow a public hearing again?
I'll make a motion to reopen to allow him an opportunity to speak.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to reopen the hearing to allow the applicant to maybe clarify this. There's a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing none opposed, the motion passes, and the public hearing has been reopened. So if you would like to clarify.
Maybe in the photo you can see
Wait, wait.
very well.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe in the photo you can see very well, but I got here a photo in my phone. You can make a close-up. It's not 14, I mistake with that. It's 12 feet. Can I show you? It's 12 feet, 6 inches.
Okay. Yeah, it's 12 feet, 6 inches.
151 inches, yes.
Okay, so if you want, let's try to clarify how much room you have in the back. So if we do, it looks to us that roughly you have 29 feet in the back, roughly. So if you have 12 and a half feet, then that means that you have 16 and a half feet available for a pool. What I'm assuming is that the reason why and that would only mean that you would need a 1 foot setback variance. Because you could still build your 10-foot pole.
Wait, remember, he may be measuring that 151 inches from the inside face of the block wall. Remember, the property line is on the other side.
Excuse me. It's not a block wall. It's a precast wall. It's like 2 inches.
No, I know, but what he's saying is, so that you understand, the 7.5 feet is not from the inside of that block. It's from that precast wood. It's from the other side.
But it's not too much. Maximum. That's
4
what
inches at least.
That is what I do. I am the owner for Artistic Fence and Walls.
Okay,
I do
so
a
you know what
precast,
it's
and
from.
The weight for the fence. I wait for the fence is a column is 5 feet, and the panel is inside the column. Maybe 4 inches, 5
4
inches.
inches, right.
No more than the property line.
Now, I'm assuming the reason why you're asking for the 5-foot setback is because you want to leave a little bit of area between where your terrace ends now and where your new pool is going to come up. Is that am I correct in that or no? Your design of the pool is to be built not exactly where their terrace ends right now, but to move it a little bit.
There's a dimension there, but I can't read it.
Yeah, I just don't know. I imagine that's about 2 feet. Do you know if it's possible to build the pool where your terrace ends now without messing up?
No, that might be a problem because he has the footings of the
He
concrete.
has the footings for the concrete. Okay.
I'm surprised that if it's a metal canopy, that it has these big footings.
Ahí es posible hacer la piscina, ¿sí? No, ¿sí o no? No, porque de donde comienza la terraza, mira lo que tú tienes el poste. Mira, él está hablando, eso son 6 pulgadas lo que tiene. Ernesto, él está hablando a donde comienza la terraza.
Hacer la piscina de aquí para acá, no se puede.
¿Por qué?
Porque tienes el poste aquí, son 6 pulgadas lo que te queda el poste. ¿Cómo vas a tener la piscina a 6 pulgadas del poste?
He said he doesn't want that.
Right, but he can't.
Because,
Because of-
I don't want the pool 6 inches to the aluminum post.
No, yeah.
Right. Yeah, because you have the footing. Yeah,
No,
you-
no, no, no.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the applicant?
No.
Okay. Do you have any other thing else? Okay, so we're going to close again the public hearing, and we're back to the board entertaining a motion to approve, to deny, to approve with condition. It's kind of the 3 things that we could do. I mean, personally, I'm going to give my opinion. I think that, the zoning in that area is RU1Z. If the 5-foot setback was the setback for the sides, it should be all the way around. I think we're being really, I don't even consider this a variance, to be quite honest. But that's my personal opinion, and I respect everyone else's opinion as well.
You're talking about the side setback.
Yeah, but, no, the only reason there's 5 and not 7.5 on the side is because this is an RU1Z. Because if it was just regular RU1, he would need 7.5 on each side, and this house would have never been built this way. So now, because the house was built that way, he's getting the disadvantage.
The home is built at 7.6.
Huh?
The home is built at 7.6.
7.6 on each side? Oh, okay. I thought it was 5 on each side.
No. It's 594. I can't read it.
No, it's 586 and 594.
586 and 594.
So I'm assuming it would have been a lot, it's just probably that.
I'm
it's
sorry,
something
you're correct.
Yeah.
I was looking in the pool
It would
drawing.
require 7.5 feet on each side if it's RU1. The only reason here is just happens at the
You're correct,
house.
you're correct. 6 and 6, yeah.
It was built with,
But this is not RU1.
huh? It's RU1Z, so that's why it's allowed up to 5 feet on each side. So my feeling is that if it's allowed for the side, it should be allowed in the back for the pool as well. But I understand it's the reading, the wording of the pool setback. And that's just my personal opinion, and again, I respect everyone's opinion.
And I think it would be more than 5 feet. Because the measurement that he has is to the inside, so it might be 5'6".
Something that we're just discussing here as a sidebar is that, based on what you just said, as far as the discrepancy that you find in the code, you could grant the variance based on that and ask for the council to take a look at the actual ordinance and clarify that.
Clarify the discrepancy from the survey and
Clarify the discrepancy of what you're suggesting in the language of the actual pool ordinance. And the fact that the zoning is one way and yet the pool ordinance seems to
Because in that general area, I know that area pretty well. I have family members that have houses there, and I know that some of the houses are built zero lot, and then some of the houses are built with 5 feet on each side. That's why I didn't even look at the survey for the 5.84. It's just I've been to a whole bunch of houses back there that have it's just the way they position the lots inside the house. It seems kind of unfair. But
If I can, to the chair.
As we have discussed in the past, sometimes variances bring to light things in the code that are discrepancies that don't make sense. So, and sometimes this is the only way we get to see them, right? At the same time, as staff, we can only apply the code as written.
Right.
We don't get to make it up. It is how it gets to the council for them to reconsider how to change things. That's one of your jobs, is to suggest changes and amendments that make sense for them to look at, particularly where it comes to things that don't make sense and that create discrepancies that injure private parties and private property owners.
If I can, to the chair, Susanna, how many other properties have the same scenario?
His entire block is within the RU1Z district, but developed as single-family properties. The properties across the street from him, and there's several other blocks, maybe another 3 blocks in the area that are also developed as single-family properties that are directly across from RU1Z properties, developed as zero lot lines.
So if we did recommend that this be looked at by the council, it wouldn't just, with all due respect, it wouldn't just benefit the applicant. It could potentially clarify and rectify a situation that impacts a number of our homeowners.
Correct. And it would ease staff's job immensely because we would be able to better apply consistently the code, which is always the goal of staff, is to be consistent.
Okay, but unfortunately, we don't have that ordinance in front of us yet. We could only make, I guess, as a new business, a suggestion to.
Much as you did with the metal roofs last year and the infinity pools, it would be forwarded to the council for consideration as a manager's report.
Okay.
So while the applicant, there's benefits on the side, you're being punished, if you will, in the back because of the way that this is applied. Then that's not okay for me. I think that we need to, I'm not quite sure how to make that motion, or if we're at the motioning stages, I think we still
we're
have
at the
public
motion for,
comments
yeah,
open.
we have to, basically, our first would be to make a motion to approve or not approve the applicant's request for the 5-foot setback being his pool setback in the back. And then the second thing, I think already you're gonna go ahead and submit your report to the board.
What I'd ask is that you do that as a motion, no?
Separate.
You can include it in both in the same motion.
can
I think the
include it in
cleaner way is that what you just, your thought process is good. Have, just so that it's clean, and since this is going to be an order for the variance, have that be one motion, and then a second motion dealing with us to go back to the council.
So for a housekeeping question, in any way, if this is put on hold, if you will, the applicant is in no way penalized, or his documents, if we had to deny in order to move it to be reviewed, we wouldn't?
You don't have to deny in order to move it.
Okay.
Because they already meet 3 out of the 7 variance criteria elements, they're already very close to the edge. If you should be inclined to approve and grant his variance with the added requirement that it go to the council for reconsideration, that is sufficient.
Yeah, but since this is
But
a
it should be-
development
it should be
order, it
definitely
should
two
be two
different separate
separate. I
motions,
mean, I
correct.
just think it's cleaner
Yes.
to have a vote, yea or nay, on his application, and then then bring up a motion that it should be changed for everybody else too. And
Correct.
based on the zoning of where your house is, not whether the developer decide to do it one way or the other, because that whole area is zoned RU1Z. It's not.
Correct.
So, can I make a motion as a chair?
Sorry?
I can make a motion as a chair?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the variance as requested by the applicant. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Okay, so there's a first and a second. We could discuss, or we can call the vote at this point.
Now, in addition to that motion, are we gonna make
A second motion for the other, right.
Okay, okay, make the second motion.
Well, first we have to vote on this one,
Okay.
so we could call the vote on this one, and then I'm gonna make a second motion.
So motion to approve the variance as requested. Board Member Leoncio.
Yes.
Board Member Senra.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matos.
Yes.
Chairman Julia.
Yes.
So the motion passes.
Okay, and before we go on to another item, I'd like to make a motion to, I guess, discuss or bring up to the board the possibility of revisiting pool setbacks in RU1Z zoning districts to clarify the language. Is that pretty good, or? Okay. Is there a second to my motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a first and a second motion, and what we're doing now is you just actually help the rest of your neighbors, because we're clarifying, we're asking the board. We don't have authority to write code. We can only suggest to the council, and they're the ones that write the code. So the motion is for them to bring attention to this particular wording and hopefully correct it. So there's a first and a second. If you would please, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Board Member Senra.
Yes.
Board Member Leoncio.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matos.
Yes.
Chairman Julia.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay. So that's, so you got your pool. So congratulations, and thank you basically for bringing up that coding language that I think is important. Going back to our agenda, so that's it for quasi-judicial public hearings. We're back to the ordinances and item 7B, which is the micro-mobility. This is regarding an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Miami Lakes, Florida, relating to transportation regulations, amending Chapter 35, streets, sidewalks, and other public places, Article 3, communication facilities in public right-of-way at Division 7, dockless mobility, relocating Division 7, dockless mobility, creating Chapter 20, transportation, creating Article 1, multimodal transportation, recreating and amending Division 5, micromobility devices, permitting and regulating the placement and the use of micromobility devices on the town's right-of-way, introducing flexibility for implementation, providing for findings of fact, intent, and purpose, and providing for regulations, providing for repeal of laws in conflict, providing for severability, providing for inclusion into the code, and providing for an effective date. Can I get a glass of water? No. Just kidding. So go staff.
Planning Department, Susana Alonso for staff. I'm going to introduce now our transportation planner who has prepared this ordinance and is taking it to the council for first reading in June. The reason that he's presenting to you guys today, even though this is not an amendment to the code, which is what you're usually, is not an amendment to the land development code, which is what you're used to seeing on a regular basis. This particular item is a presentation that amends an element of the comprehensive plan, which is transportation, which is under your purview. So the other, shall we say, child that you guys take care of, besides the land development code, is the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan includes transportation as an element, and is a pretty important element in the town of Miami Lakes. And for that reason, ordinances that have to do with transportation should be reviewed by the planning board as well, and you should recommend in favor of or not, as you do with ordinances that go for the land development code. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Michael Sayas Morales, our transportation planner. He's been with us for a little bit more than a year, and he's made a big difference already in our view of transportation.
Well, thank you, Susanna, and good evening, Planning Board. I didn't came prepared to do a presentation, extensive presentation on the item, but basically what you have in front of you is an ordinance, a proposed ordinance in second reading to explore the opportunity to bring multimodal transportation options to town residents in the future for a potential implementation of a pilot program for micromobility. What we are proposing in this ordinance in second reading that will go to the council board in June is a flexibility. So the ordinance will state the bones of what we are aiming to propose, and then by a resolution we are implementing the details of what the town is looking to implement in these potential programs for micromobility. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
I do have a question. So this is basically like the motorized scooters?
So basically the ordinance is for every micromobility device, and within the resolution we are going to state what the town goals are for implementing for the micromobility program. So you, for example, you have within micromobility devices, scooters, bicycles, electric bicycles, and you have mopeds and a hybrid device, which is either a bicycle or a scooter, and it's really smaller.
Now, what I wasn't clear on is these items would be, even if they're motorized, they're going to be allowed to be on the sidewalk?
Yes, they are going to have a regulated speed, and they have to yield to pedestrians at all times. Whenever we have a road with bicycle facilities, they are going to be encouraged to use that facility.
But in one of the things, I saw something about a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less.
That's the definition of a micromobility device. Within the resolution, we are going to state that these devices are going to be 15 miles per hour, whether it's a bicycle facility, and then I have to go back to the resolution because it's still in the work plan, but I am really secure that it also states at 10 miles per hour on sidewalks.
Would go-karts be included in this?
Micromobility devices are not going to encompass golf carts, but that is something that I am exploring myself.
Because there are golf carts in the, I mean, I live on the west side, and there's several people that go to Anthony's Pizza with go-karts.
So currently, those are not allowed in the town?
Yeah, I didn't think so.
They're just not enforced as often as we'd like. But also, I think it's important, and Mr. Sayas can talk a little bit about that. There's a difference between golf carts and what are called low-speed vehicles.
Right.
There are some golf carts that, I mean, vehicles.
Street legal,
I'm
I
sorry,
guess.
there's some vehicles that look like golf carts, but they're not. They're street legal.
Right.
So.
Basically, the main difference is the speed limit. So a low-speed vehicle is required or is allowed to be 20 to 25 miles per hour on a road, and a golf cart doesn't allow for that. So golf carts are usually less than 20 miles per hour. And basically, that's one of the main differences.
Also, LSVs have to be registered, they have to have insurance,
And the
they have certain other requirements that make them street legal versus a golf cart that's not.
My biggest concern, to be quite honest, in this had to do with potential liability to the city for what a motorized thing could, and it's just because recently we were in another town in the United States, and my kids rented, you know, they had these scooters, and they were going whatever speed they were going, like, so now when I saw this, and the thing is, when I read your insurance requirements, I'm not 100% sure what kind of coverage we're going to be looking at, because it just says no less than the insurance coverage required by the implemented micromobility program at the moment of submitting. So I don't even know numerically, and I could just tell you that I'm in the middle of another thing in another business where we always think that $1 million liability is a lot of money. It's not, because I just got a call today and they're asking, so what are you bringing to the table? Because we're paying policy limits, and this is a lot more than policy limits. So what, I don't know, from the town's perspective, I like the identification language, but it's only going to be as good as,
I agree with the liability portion. That's something that's always concerning. I think that the idea of and what Mr. Saez is working on as far as creating an ordinance, or we already have an ordinance, revisiting that ordinance and making it into something that can work more with these micromobility companies makes sense. Do you have to allow them on the sidewalk necessarily? No, you don't. And the reason why he puts there as far as the insurance to be implemented is that goes really hand in hand with the actual resolution of creating a pilot program that's going to incentivize companies, and Mr. Saez, stop me if I'm wrong, that's going to incentivize these companies to come. And right now, that's the part that we're really working on. So in that resolution itself, it would have insurance requirements as far as what kind of general liability coverages in the aggregate and for individual incidents the town is going to require. That's not something yet that's in this ordinance. It just provides that the resolution is going to provide for that. Indemnity clauses.
is that resolution going to be basically when the town awards a contract to a particular vendor, or we're going to first define what the insurance requirements are going to be and then do an RFP or whatever you want to call it?
So, yes, if I may, basically we are going to propose the ordinance in second reading, and if it passes on the council board, then I am going to bring back a resolution that is going to state the details of what the town is looking for. At the end, after the recommendations and after the coordination with these providers that want to bring the business of micromobility for the town, is that I'm going to present to the council board the final results. But the details about the amount of insurance for each kind of liability is going to be first drafted in the resolution, and then I will have the guidance to enter in negotiations with the providers.
And once you develop the guidance, I'm assuming that depending on whether it's motorized or not motorized, there's a potential that the liability insurance requirements coverage could be different, one versus the other, potentially speaking.
So within the resolution, and when the resolution, we have a stated amount, but that is something that I can basically explore with legal if it pertains to.
Because if the incentive is that you want to bring in, the Lime and the Spin and those people, I guess theoretically speaking, there's potentially a little bit less liability on those versus somebody on a 20 miles per hour going on a sidewalk. I'm just thinking.
You're right.
So we're gonna be sharing the sidewalk with these vehicles, right?
Yeah, but they're only going to go 20 miles an hour.
At 20
How
miles
fast
an
can you
hour.
run?
Yeah, I think that's a big mistake. We're just looking for trouble.
Oh, mama. Okay.
So what you're addressing is, again, there's a lot of latitude here of what the town can do. We can allow it on the sidewalks. We don't have to allow it on the sidewalks. We can just allow it on the street. If it's a micromobility device, you can differentiate. Really, the statute, Florida law, differentiates between what is a bicycle and what is a micromobility device, and really treats them similar but different. It incorporates a lot of the same elements of bicycle in micromobility, but not all the micromobility are really identified in bicycles. So that being said, that's one aspect. The second aspect is you're talking about the insurance and the resolution. And so the idea is, and Mr. Saez has been very good and very tenacious in trying to get some of these companies to really pay attention to Miami Lakes, because that's the other thing. We're a small town, so to get them to pay attention to us is not necessarily an easy feat, but he's been successful at doing that, is to really create some kind of a pilot program in where maybe we can bring a couple of these that can offer all the different types of devices, and then maybe open it up to the market if those programs are successful. But we're not there yet. He's still massaging that, and that's something that is, this is the first step, the ordinance.
Yeah, but if I may add also, I share some of your preoccupations, if I say. This market is really innovative, and they are creating new technologies to be able to allow this share use facility between pedestrians and micromobility devices, right? So they are able to regulate the speed that these devices are going to and from, But they also create something that is called geofencing, right? So basically, whether you have a location that is a high volume pedestrian facility like Main Street or something like that, you can require that these providers create a geofencing zone where it would not be permitted for this micromobility device to go towards to. So if that is something that we are going to propose in the resolution, and I am spearheading that because I don't want that to see that conflict, within pedestrians and these micromobility devices, we are going to require that the micromobility companies, and again, it will be a recommendation, so it will be based on the town council if they approve this or with amendments, right? But whether if we create the geofencing within the Main Street, the devices are going to be allowed to get close, but not into Main Street, to avoid that conflict between pedestrian and the devices itself. So you have different alternatives, whether it is like geofencing, whether it is the speed regulation, to be able to address some of the challenges that these devices brings.
And if I just may add on that geofencing, and one of the ventures that I'm involved in is transportation. So we have trucks all over the country, and we could geofence them to the point that I could turn off the engine of a truck or turn it off or on from my office, and it could be in Washington State. And if it's going into this area or that area, so I imagine the technology for this has to be there that it could regulate, once it goes into a certain area, literally the engine can turn off or turn on.
Similar to the golf carts and the golf courses, when you get too close to the green. It won't go any further. My question, I have a question, if you might. How do we arrive at the rationale of allowing these vehicles on a sidewalk? Knowing that we have bike paths around town, I don't know exactly how many miles we have of bike paths, and then bicycles, usually just a regular bicycle, I don't think they're allowed on sidewalks. I don't know if there's an ordinance for that, but usually all these bicycles, they ride on the street or on the bike path. So how do we arrive at that rationale to...
I will say this, and Lorenzo, you can help me here if I'm saying something incorrectly, but basically bicycles are able to ride on the sidewalk unless municipalities say the contrary. So in this case, in Miami Lakes, you are able to ride on the sidewalks, right? What I am trying to do is mirroring best practices to be able to offer comfort for people to get out of their cars, right? So we know how people drive throughout South Florida. And if we require that these devices only ride on the roads, then we are limiting the option for the people. So that's why I'm encouraging, my recommendation is to encourage people to use bicycle facilities where possible and existent, but to be able to use the sidewalk when possible as well.
I have a question, Susanna, to the chair. When we implemented Complete Streets, isn't that part of our strategic or master plan? And didn't Complete Streets have bicycle lanes
Yes,
on the streets?
very good question. As usual.
I was a huge advocate for Complete Streets.
Yes.
Still am.
And most of the, Michael is my partner in crime in the Complete Streets endeavors. We are going around looking for projects where Complete Streets can be implemented. I drive the developers crazy trying to implement Complete Streets wherever anybody's developing for the first time. Any project that we're putting in, we're looking for anywhere that we can have a shared use path as opposed to a sidewalk. So we're trying to have as many either dedicated bike lanes. The discussion is always whether they have to be protected bike lanes or just dedicated bike lanes off the road, or whether the particular street accommodates a wider pedestrian path that is wider than 6 feet, in which case it's considered, if it's 8 feet or 10 feet, is considered a shared use pathway, in which you can share the space with bicycles safely because there's room for people to move out of the way or for the bicycle to go around pedestrians safely. The preferred, so and help me out when I get it wrong. The state of Florida has evolved its understanding of these individual elements of mobility, right? So the difference between spaces that vehicles occupy, spaces where pedestrians occupy, and spaces where bicycles or other modes of transportation occupy. In the past, they were discussing, sidewalks are only for pedestrians, and then the pavement has to be shared between all these other vehicles, and therefore you have to put in a bicycle path if you want to have bicycles, or the bicycles have to share the road with the vehicles, in which case they would put sharrows, and this is the way that they were going about it. In the last couple of years, they are sort of changing the way they implement these by beginning to incentivize share use paths wherever possible. So the strategy now, as far as the state of Florida goes, not that Miami-Dade County or other municipalities are catching on yet, but the state of Florida, FDOT, is beginning to think more about shared use paths first, protected bike lanes second, unprotected bike lanes third, and sharrows in the very, very last. Obviously, whenever you start trying to do and retrofit our existing network of streets to be able to introduce all these new forms of transportation, things get very silly very fast. In some places, our right-of-way is literally taken over by the pavement, leaving just 3 feet for a pretend swale, because you can't even call it a property. You have literally no room for a sidewalk. Then we have the canopy to contend with. We don't want to harm the canopy, so trying to fit all these elements in there, it's always a giant game of puzzle, where you're trying to fit things that need to be there, but don't necessarily fit. So that's why we're sort of expanding the amounts of tools that we have so that we can meet everybody's and that we can allow all these kinds of mobility types on our roads, especially with the thought that from inclusivity, where we include all types of mobility into our network, considering that many people cannot use a vehicle, cannot use a car in order to take care of their primary business. You can include people that have handicaps that cannot drive a car, but maybe use a motorized scooter, a little handicap. Sidewalks don't do well for them for the same reason that they don't do well for regular bicycles and other motorized items. So this is all an effort to expand all these networks and begin to have more options for everybody to use. And yes, in the future we will be talking about golf carts, and we will be talking about all kinds of other stuff that are coming down the pike one at a time. But right now he's laying out the groundwork and the base layers for all these things to be able to fit in, and all these new pieces to come in and be able to be discussed.
I'm sorry, I need clarification. It's been a lot of conversation tonight. Through the chair, if I can, Mike. So the speed limit, we have to have?
A speed limit? So in the resolution, I'm proposing a speed limit regulation. It would be 15 miles per hour, and whether we have a high congested sidewalk in this case or pedestrian, it will be regulated towards 7. At least from my professional recommendation, that would be the language that I am seeking to add.
So not 25 miles an hour?
No, that's the definition itself. But the resolution will state the difference between up to 50 miles per hour, and then whether you have a conflict or a high pedestrian facility, will be up to 7.
So just because I have to ask the question, does it have to be 15? Could it be 10? You know, when we analyzed a number of things over the years, and I've been a huge advocate for reducing speeds, and when research is done to show the difference between 25 miles an hour and 30 miles an hour, it's significant. I'm assuming that there's a significance between 10 and 15. Does it have to be 15? 15 is still, in a small motorized vehicle, when you're on a sidewalk and you've got a pedestrian, I'm pushing the baby carriage and walking the dog and somebody's zipping by me at 15 miles an hour and I'm trying to get out of the way.
It doesn't have to be 15. That was the intended at the beginning with my recommendation, but we can look into that.
And that was a question. Has there been any studies done or has there been any analysis of the difference between the speeds? Does it make a difference? Is it, easier to control the vehicles at a different speed? I don't have any expertise in that.
Yeah, so basically it is a positive relationship whether you are in a speed limit less than the expected, the crash decrease as well. The only thing is that from all my research done, the speed limits are up to 15. So that's why I was seeking the same best practice that they are, but this is not a set in stone language. We can acquire your recommendations and work on looking into that.
Thanks. You're doing a great job. Appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are any more questions or anything, then we would entertain, I guess, a motion to approve, not approve. Not, I guess.
You can make a motion that
Suggestions, if you
your
wanna
suggestions, whatever.
suggest a 10, suggesting a 10 miles, making sure insurance is there. Those kinds of things I'm concerned with liability. Maybe it's just because of a call that I got today.
And I have a problem with allowing those vehicles on the sidewalks. I have a problem with that.
But where are you going to have them? I mean,
I think they would have to ride on the streets. I think
like
they
Ms.
would
Matos was
really.
saying, and I agree with that, and I am going to make a motion on the 10 miles an hour because I mean, this afternoon I was jogging, and here's a bicyclist coming at me. I mean, the guy wasn't doing 15 miles an hour. The guy was doing 50 miles an hour.
Well, I mean, look at Park West, for example. Park West has a path that goes all around the park. They don't allow any motorized vehicles in there. They don't even allow bikes.
Well, I mean,
So
bikes,
what is the difference between that and a sidewalk?
Bikes are missiles, and they can hit you and they can hurt you.
We haven't discussed this. A while ago, maybe a year or so ago, I don't think we've seen it as much recently. There were a number of incidences where young people, younger than me, were riding their bikes together at high rates of speed down the middle of 87th Avenue and 67th Avenue. Are those motorized bikes? And how do you differentiate? I'm not being facetious here at all. I really mean this. How do you differentiate between a motorized bike and a motorized bike that's driving inappropriately? So what are the guidelines? So if you have a motorized bike, you're in the road or you're not in the road, right? I mean, obviously, driving down 67th Avenue in the middle of the road is not an appropriate use of a motorized bike. But what are the guidelines?
So you bring up a very good point.
I mean,
Not all users are equal, right? So which is why having a plethora of choices of types of places where different things are allowed is where sort of like we need to hit this sweet spot. Some bicycles, right, by definition, you can have a 5-year-old on a bicycle, he's going to go 3 miles an hour. Or you can have, I have a neighbor when I used to live in the Anchorage, there's 2 gentlemen that are professional bike riders. They go, I've timed them at 35 miles an hour. That's how fast they actually ride and they do not have a motor on their bicycle. These are just human-powered bicycles.
And they don't ride on the sidewalk, right?
And no, they do not. They choose not to ride on the sidewalk. They choose to. There is a lane available for them that they could be using, and they choose not to use it because they want to ride on the pavement. Because they don't want to be encumbered with the ins and outs of the sidewalk and the ups and downs, and again, because different people have different uses for the same thing. So our intention, Mike and the town's intention, is to continue to look for ways where we look for ways for people like that choose to do their exercise on a really fast bike, have a safe place and a safe way to do so, and so do 5-year-old kids that are trying to outrun their mom and the dog and the stroller. And at the same time, have appropriate facilities where people that are trying to commute using these bikes and maybe trying to use the public transportation system and using these micromobility services to supplement their last few miles after they get dropped off by the bus somewhere, be able to have all these things happen. And it is a difficult job to sort of mesh all these things together and make sure there's safety for everybody and make sure they all have room and space. But here we go.
Thank you.
So we're entertaining motions.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve with the condition that the micromobility maximum speed is 10 miles per hour.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'm going to second it for discussion.
Okay, there's a second. So now we'll open it to discussion on the matter.
I'm gonna say no because I'm against, totally
speed.
against the sidewalk thing. I'm not against
Well, we could
those,
amend,
micro, mobility, I'm fine with that, but they should ride on the street, and hopefully someday we'll have, bike paths all over town. I mean, I see those in Homestead, along Chrome Avenue, downtown Homestead has it, so.
If I may, I share your preoccupation, right? These things work differently in any municipality that you implement the program, right? So at this time, although I have some background experience in transportation, I cannot tell you if they are going to work well or no in the town. This is an exploratory pilot program where we are going to see how they work. It is pursued in the form of resolution and ordinance, right? Because whenever we are going to see in the future a challenge, if this gets implemented, we can act right away by bringing another resolution to the council and work and address that challenge, right? In any case, if this gets implemented and by 1 month or the second month it doesn't work, the town have the power to cancel the pilot program at any time. But right now, I'm just exploring the opportunity to bring this to a town and to recommend the implementation in order to try to look for ways of getting people out of their cars.
This is basically thinking outside the box,
Trying
trying to, and the reality is, like, I'm just assuming again from a business perspective, in order for these things to generate enough traffic, even though you're going to discourage geofence them, whatever, on Main Street, but if Main Street is going to have people there, that's potentially, let's say I live on the west side, instead of getting my car to go to Main Street, do I get into one of these scooter things? And I don't know, I'm not there yet, but I think I'm still sticking to my car, but again, I'm open.
I would hate to see a young lady with a baby on a stroller on the sidewalk, and the guy or whoever is driving one of those micro mobility things is running into that stroller because somebody was not paying attention, which is usually the case here in South Florida. People drive like maniacs. We all know that.
And just to think
for the most
about
part,
it,
you have to watch a intersection of people running red lights and all that because it happens all the time.
And the missile could be a 6-year-old. like my grandson.
Yeah.
We were at the park here by the Boy Scouts, and there's a lot of
So,
folks
so I would
that
hate to
walk.
see during
And these children,
the
they ride
period
the
that we are
bicycles
considering it,
like crazy.
having accidents like that.
What do you do?
I have a problem
on the
with it.
street?
But by the same token, if we don't explore these options, then those people who cannot drive their hands are tied to independence. I have a friend that I know that he still drives some. I oftentimes see him on the east side, and he drives his motorized scooter. I've watched him a number of times because I find it super interesting.
You're talking about a handicap scooter? That I don't have a problem with, because usually those people are careful.
Right, but it doesn't have a sign on it, so I don't know if it is or it isn't. So, but my point is, perhaps he isn't able to drive at the level that he would want to anymore. So if we don't explore and pursue some of these options, then we never open that path up for new ideas, new opportunities. I really think that the sidewalk thing is tough for all of us. You know, we're struggling. We're struggling with that. And yet, there are so many places in Miami Lakes that we're not going to have the bike lanes. I mean, remember when we had crosswalks that didn't connect and things? We've come a long way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when Complete Streets, as an example, was first proposed, there were things about that too. But if we don't take the step forward and give Mike the opportunity and his team and the town to explore that, if we don't go to the edge of the cliff and jump, we're not going to know if we fly. I want us to fly.
I just hate to be the one standing on the cliff, you know. And
Man, I'm usually the one on the cliff, for sure. I feel a little bit on the cliff right now. But I really believe that, and based on what I have seen and know of Mike, and we've talked before when he first came, it seems to me that you're being incredibly diligent and very mindful of all of the things that we're talking about. So if we don't do this, then what? Then so much of what we've worked towards about being able to have the type of town where we can move about without our cars, that's a goal, not just for Miami Lakes, but for every municipality. And the more that we create that environment, the more we attract people to our community that want that type of lifestyle.
I just have a problem with the sidewalks, that's all.
Help me here, Mike. I really think that for me, if we can at least add the component at 10 miles an hour, again, when we did the research about between 25 and 30 was significant. So between 10 and 15 is a big difference when you look at the impacts. I want this to go forward because I want to see what the next step is. And if there's no other option but to include the sidewalks, then we have to go to the cliff. How about if we increase the liability levels too? Will that help?
Well,
No.
I am concerned with that, but I'm
concerned
hoping you
about
guys are
that
going to be
too. We're very
addressing
concerned
that
about
and again, it's all a business perspective, because I could say here, like in the transportation world, people want the trucking companies to have now $5 million liability. Yeah, they're great. That just increased our policy to a level that it makes it unaffordable to have a trucking company, or you're going to pay even more. So here, for me to say, you should have at least $5 million liability, I could say it because I'm not paying for it. That may preclude you from being able to get the right vendor, because he's gonna do a cost analysis. You know, liability insurance for this kind of product is probably not the cheapest thing in the world, because there is potential. So,
But that-
I know that we probably have to allow them some flexibility. My concern is I was a little bit alleviated when you said you're first gonna set that liability rule, because my concern is always not, you know, you or those of us that are here. It's what we do towards the future. And, you know, unfortunately, I've seen enough that I don't want it. What I definitely don't want it to do was every time a vendor came about, then there was a negotiation, and then that liability could be altered. And we know what happens sometimes, that, you know, everybody knows this, oh no, no problem. And then all of a sudden now we got a vendor in here with very little liability, and then we get stuck. Because at the end of the day, if the town approves the 10 speed per mile on a sidewalk, and it, you know, somebody gets thrown off the street, the town is gonna get sued. I mean, you could put all the identification language you want on the ordinance. We're gonna get sued. Our name is gonna be there.
Yeah, town owns the sidewalks.
Oh, yeah, and we're enabling the ordinance to allow the damn things to be there. So I can't imagine, that the town would not be at least named. The extent of our liability,
So it has to include the sidewalks. Is that a yes?
I imagine to make it work, when you connect the whole city, there are gonna be areas that's gonna have to go through sidewalks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It doesn't have to require sidewalks, but we have seen, and by we transportation planners, that sidewalks are an important factor of this, just because, as you mentioned, Chair, they connect the whole town. So in order to be able to at least attract different people, we have to be able to offer more or less of a safe infrastructure. That in this case, sadly, the town doesn't have all roads with bicycle facilities, so that's why we are exploring the possibility of allowing them into the sidewalks. And talking about the liability component, we are exploring that within the resolution. We are mirroring Florida's status, I believe, or FDOT, if I'm not mistaken, and the amounts are 551, 5 million, 5 million, 1 million. And basically, from my conversations briefly with different providers in the market, those providers are able to offer that kind of liability just because of the markets that they are in. So this is something that is required, for example, by Fort Lauderdale, the city of Fort Lauderdale, and providers also have to comply with that because it's required by ordinance.
But knowing, just piggybacking on what you're saying, we have a Hialeah zip code. We don't have a Miami Lakes zip code. And we are considered to be in a high-risk area when it comes to traffic for that same purpose. In other words, people here, they don't know how to drive. Most people don't know how to drive, and some are entertained with a phone, so they don't pay attention to the lights, and they don't pay attention. So imagine on a sidewalk.
Okay, so we're back to
You got a motion?
There was a motion.
Motion
It was
still
already
stands.
seconded. It was already seconded by Lynn.
Yeah.
So we could vote.
You may.
Board Member Leoncio.
Yes.
Board Member Senra.
No.
Vice Chair Matos.
Yes.
Chairman Julia.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right.
Okay. I volunteer that we're going to test the 10 mile per hour with board member Sandra. See the liability that we can assess.
No, I made
And then I'll
bring
entertain
in
a
some
motion.
motorized bikes, and I talked to him about it.
there new business, or are we good to go, or we have, okay. Well, it was an entertaining board. We covered everything. So, meeting adjourned. Oh, wait,